you're not going to leave here in about an hour as better writers than you came in the door, right? You are going to hear me talk about writing, but if you're going to become better writers, you're going to have to practice, which is to say, you're not going to become better writers by believing what I tell you tonight. You're going to become better writers by doing as I say, right? So you'll have to take my advice and see this as exercises. And that also gives you a good way to try to interpret what I say, a good way of listening, which is whatever I'm saying, try to understand it in terms of something I'm suggesting you do. So think about this as activities that you can sit down and carry out, right? Because I'm not telling you what the rules are. I'm not telling you what good writing is. I'm telling you how to become better writers. And you'll do that through activities repeated over time, right? And we're certainly here to support that. So please listen in that spirit. A final thing that is worth considering is why you're here. What drew you to a lecture called How to Write? And generally, I imagine there's three things. One of the things that you might be worried about is that you're not going to be getting the writing done that you need to get done. Right? You might think, I have a lot of writing to do as part of my coursework, and I'm worried that I'm not going to get it done. And the approach I'm going to show to you tonight will certainly help you get that under control. It should certainly give you much more confidence about how much writing you can do in how much time, and so you'll be much better able to predict your productivity. Right? It will make you more productive writers. But some of you are very productive writers, and that's not why you're here. Right? You're here because you know you are full of great ideas, and you have experienced that sometimes your teachers don't appreciate your great ideas, which is to say they don't give you the grades that you think you deserve for the knowledge that you've acquired during your coursework. So you've worked really hard, you've learned a lot of things, and you experience that this doesn't quite result in the communication that you were hoping for with the examiner. So basically you want to write more effectively. Right? You want to become a more effective writer. Does that make sense? Right? So that's certainly also something I can help you develop your overall effect as a writer, your impact on the reader. So you can become more productive and more effective. As you can hear, you're at a business school, so you're getting kind of a consulting product here. And what's going on here, though, is that also some of you will be thinking, I don't have those problems. You were here for a third reason, and it may be a reason you hadn't been quite conscious of. You'll meet these people a lot at university. Very productive, prolific writers, and very effective writers. They'll be famous for their ideas. Some of your teachers will be these people, right? They will impress you with the quality of their writing, and certainly the people will recognize their names, right? But if you talk to them about writing, you'll discover that they're miserable. They hate it. It's a chore. It makes them unhappy. And so we can fix that too. So you can become more productive, more effective, or happier. And you choose which of those things you want to really focus on. And certainly what's going to happen here is maybe you came here with one goal in mind, one of those three goals in mind, and you'll come here, you'll leave here wanting to work on some of the others. Or maybe you'll just want to work on a couple of them, and then in a year's time you'll realize, okay, now I've got productivity and effect under control. And so I'm writing enough prose, and I'm writing it well enough, and now I want to enjoy it, right? And that's certainly something that you can get out of what I'm going to tell you. Is that fair? I hope you still feel you're in the right room. I want to start with a little thought experiment. Some of you are probably taking communication relevant studies, so you'll have maybe played with this kind of experiment before, but it's certainly a useful exercise to do. Imagine a situation where the goal is communicating, and it's a very simple situation. There's one person that you have to communicate one thing you know to. So it has to be something you know. You're talking about something you know, and you're going to communicate it to one other person. And there are some constraints on this, or some conditions on this, let's say. Right? One of them is that you only have 1 minute to do it. You have as much time as you want to prepare, to set up, but you'll only have 1 minute of their attention. The good thing is you'll have their attention during that minute. You don't have to get their attention, right? So they've already promised to pay attention to you, right? So you're going to, you'll have their attention. Also, they are very knowledgeable about the subject too, right? So they're not your parents, they're not your nieces and nephews that are doing something else completely. They are knowledgeable about the subject that you are going to communicate to them. And finally, after you're done, after this minute is over, they will consider the matter very carefully. Right? They will give it some thought. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, that's you've got this. What would be the ideal medium for that situation? In what would be the ideal medium for communicating one thing you know to one other person in 1 minute under those conditions that I just described? The iPhone is the ideal medium for this, yes. So some people would actually say, well, let's get some social media involved. Maybe a tweet or a series of tweets, a tweet storm would be the appropriate medium. Others would say, well, I'm going to make a YouTube video, a 1 minute length, and it will communicate it, and so forth, right? Some people say, personal communication is the best. I'm just going to sit down with them at a table and I will talk to them for a minute. Just keep in mind that all of those things introduce complexities into the communication, right? All of those media that we can think of, the richer the bandwidth, so to speak, the more complexities we don't control, right? So there's lots of things that the receiver will react to that we're not in control of. And that's why something was invented thousands of years ago. It's called writing. And it's a little more intricate than that. This is a particular kind of writing. You'll notice it's not poetry. Right? It's prose writing. So it's sentences and paragraphs. Right? And that's what we're going to learn to use. I said 1 minute, and you'll all probably have been aware that when you read articles online, sometimes they'll say this will take 7 minutes to read. The usual normal formula for that is they'll just take the amount of words and divide by 200, and that gives you the amount of minutes. So they're assuming about 200 words a minute of reading attention. Right? That's a pretty standard bit of advice, and we'll get back to exactly that proportion later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you to leverage this ideal medium for the communication of knowledge. Right? That's my plan for today. And what I've done here is I've mapped out kind of slots that you need to put in your brain. There's exactly 15 spots. So you can imagine that over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to tell you about 15 things. It's going to take about 3 minutes to tell you each of them, right? And so that's sort of the matrix that we're going to be working in today, is how we're going to fill this out. That is a bit of foreshadowing for those of you who may have heard some of these things before. And what I'm going to try to do is show you what academic writing is. And not all of this is going to be about writing, because academic writing is a very specific kind of thing, right? Scholarly writing is the art of writing down what you know for the purpose of discussing it with other knowledgeable people, right? That is a very, very important part of the definition. The purpose is actually to open yourself to criticism from people who are qualified to give you that criticism. In a sense, you're trying to tell people what you think, but the people you're trying to tell are people who you respect enough for their knowledge that if you're wrong, you'll listen to them tell you that you're wrong, right? So it's always a critical occasion. The really important thing about academic writing is you're presenting knowledge in this way, not to impress them, not to sell them a car, right? But you're presenting it in such a way as to open yourself to criticism so you can have a discussion. The whole point of writing academically is to facilitate a discussion, right? And what you'll notice is that knowledge is on both sides of that equation, all right? So I have to know something in order to participate in scholarly writing, because otherwise I can't write down something I know, right? But I also have to write it down in such a way that another knowledgeable person can receive it. So this other person also has to know something, right? And that raises the very important question, what is knowledge, right? And not just really what is knowledge, because there's lots of kinds of knowledge that are perfectly legitimate, very valuable kinds of knowledge, practical knowledge, business knowledge, right? Knowledge that you will be using in practice, right? But there's also a particular kind of knowledge that we call academic knowledge. So really, when you think this through, you have to recognize that we're talking about a specific kind of knowing, the kind of knowing you do in school, the kind of knowing that scientists do, the kind of knowing that researchers do.